And now, the news from our London studios. MTA International brings you the world news.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to a special episode of MTA World News, wherein we will review the year 2018 and the activities of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community across the globe. Viewers, of course, it is entirely impossible to discuss and summarize the innumerous activities that Hazrat Khalifatul Masih, may Allah be his helper, and the global Ahmadiyya Muslim community is involved in. But we aim to provide you a glimpse of those activities in the year 2018. So let's take a look.
For the global head and caliph of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, the new year begins with prayers, and 1,700 fortunate Ahmadi Muslims were able to join him in person at the grounds of the London Mosque. Fajr was only the start. 50 Khuddam spent the morning cleaning the local area following the festive celebrations of nearby non-Ahmadis. Similar activities took place across the Channel in mainland Europe, where the continent's press and media reported on the efforts of Ahmadis in Sweden and Lithuania. Meanwhile, Humanity First Indonesia used New Year's Day to kickstart their Clean the City campaign, which received recognition when the Clean the City team were invited directly by the government to assist with a national event later in the year. Cleanliness is a part of faith. It certainly isn't restricted to a single country, nor to a single day. Through 2018, MTN News reported on Wakariamal events from Australia, Ghana and Nigeria.
Throughout the year, Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, may Allah be his helper, takes every opportunity to deliver the true, peaceful message of Islam to both the leaders of nations and the general public. January was no different, as His Holiness was visited at the Bed al-Fudul Mosque by two of Britain's most important politicians, former cabinet members Vince Cable and Ed Davey. The Caliph took the opportunity to express his concern against ongoing wars in the Middle East.
One specific issue that he dwelt on was the terrible famine in Yemen, and asking us to speak out for a proper humanitarian response to it.
His Holiness is also visited throughout the year by official delegations from within the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. In January, just some of those he met included converts from Canada and the Tehreek-e-Jadid team from the USA.
The new year was the perfect opportunity to launch training and development schemes among the office bearers of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. The UK Office Bearers Forum and media outreach training sessions were respectively held in January. Similarly, Indonesia's Lajna Women's Organization held a refresher course, while MTA Indonesia launched a new interactive educational program aimed at answering questions sent in by Ahmadi Muslims. These training initiatives didn't begin and end in January, but continued throughout the year. In the UK, regional office bearers forums were held in February, alongside a National Amure Kharja conference. The same month, Majlis Ansarullah held their refreshers course, with a Zuama forum following later in the year. Bangladesh's Khuddam held their office bearers training in May, while Nigeria's Khuddam held theirs in July. In fact, MT News reported on Khuddam, Lajna and Ansar training workshops from Nigeria, as well as general workshop on social media and an Imam refresher course. Then, in Indonesia, we reported on their general educational lectures, Wasiyah training, MTA training, and an Imam refresher course. By September, Indonesia's Central Mosque was even opening its facilities to train external organizations. But of course, there is no form of education more important than learning the Quran and teaching it to others, and so MTA News reported on various relevant events this year, including a Talimul Quran class held in the USA.
The education of children is just as important as that of adults. So, in January, Finland's Ahmadi Muslims held their Children's Day. Similar events took place throughout the year. In the UK, children spent a week at a spring retreat in Jamia. In 2018, Jamaica's Ahmadiyya Muslims launched their first ever free 2-week summer camp for 50 mostly Christian children at the Mehdi Mosque complex. Similarly, Spain's Basharat Mosque opened its doors for school visits throughout the year, while student visits were also hosted in Indonesia. MTA News also reported on an Indonesian Tarbiyat event and a Hifz class from the USA. One country we reported from regularly in 2018 was Nigeria, including the week-long build-up to their Itfal Ijtima, their Hifz graduation, and more than one Ahmadiyya Muslim Student Association event. But perhaps no story about children touched our hearts quite like the Institute for Special Education, Rabwa, whose sports team won an inspirational 25 medals at a national competition in Pakistan.
Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, may Allah be his helper, covered a wide array of spiritual, moral and administrative topics during his Friday sermons this year. He also spoke at length on a series about the companions of the Battle of Badr. On occasion, His Holiness announced the funerals of respected personages within the global Ahmadiyya Muslim community at the end of his sermon. This year's martyrs from Pakistan included Qazi Muhammad Salman Shaheed and Muhammad Zafrullah Shaheed, both of whom were targeted fatally only for holding Ahmadiyya beliefs. One funeral His Holiness read in January was of the Nazir-e-Ala of Pakistan and the Caliph's respected uncle, Sahibzada Mirza Khurshid Ahmad. Other life devotees from the Promised Messiah's family whose funerals His Holiness read in 2018 included Sahibzada Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, also a Nazir-e-Ala, Sahibzada Mirza Majid Ahmad, and Sahibzada Mirza Anas Ahmad. His Holiness also read the funerals of dozens of other respected personalities from around the world, including the life devotees Usman Chow Chini Sahib of the UK and Sayyidi Aziz Ahmed Sahib of Indonesia.
Through the year, we took our viewers to the Vakfano conventions of Indonesia, New York, Nigeria, Spain, Sweden and Switzerland. But none could match the impact of those attended by the Caliph of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community over the course of a weekend in February. Speaking at the Beit al-Futuh Mosque, Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, may Allah be his helper, delivered a powerful and inspirational address on women's rights to Vakfano girls.
Islam established the rights of women based upon their role in society and keeping their best interests at heart. Certainly, the rights afforded by Islam are based on wisdom and human nature.
The following day, a second address on the responsibilities of Vakfano, or devotees to Islam, was delivered to the boys.
Sweden's Lajna used World Hijab Day at the start of February as an opportunity to combat false stereotypes about Muslim women and Islam. A number of guests enjoyed trying on the hijab at their exhibition, while the message reached an even wider audience through numerous national media reports. The Ahmadiyya Muslim Community's women's organisation works independently around the world to empower and educate women. This year, MTA News reported on just a small fragment of these global activities, including peace symposiums from Germany to Australia, several interfaith events in Indonesia, a Lajna exhibition in Sri Lanka, and Mina Bazaars from the UK and Ireland.
Coming to the Ahmadiyyan functions over my year as mayor has been wonderful because it shows how women are empowered, it shows strength and togetherness. I've never met an organization as cohesive and show so much support to each other like this community. And I would like to invite most of my people from my community to your community to see how we can adapt that togetherness and work together.
It's a great opportunity to meet with the members of the Ahmadiyya community and particularly the women and just to flavour the different culture in terms of the food and crafts.
February also marks the anniversary of the incredible prophecy of the promised son. So MTA News covered promised Sunday events from Ghana, Switzerland and Indonesia.
At the start of the year, MTA reported on Humanity First training and networking events in Canada, Dubai and at the United Nations in Geneva. However, the organization's true training event came about when Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, may Allah be his helper, addressed their international conference in March.
Wherever people are facing material suffering and deprivation of any kind, Humanity First should seek to be at the forefront of providing aid and assistance, no matter where in the world or which communities they hail from. Humanity First should seek to provide relief to those mired in poverty and hardship. This is your mission. This is your duty. This is your faith.
His words had an inspirational effect on Humanity First throughout the year. With fundraising events such as a telethon, the organisation was able to raise over £2.5 million, and the sacrifices of dedicated, highly trained Ahmadiyya Muslim volunteers meant the impact of donations was stretched around the world. In Iraq, thousands of refugees were served at camps where Humanity First gifted medical equipment, helping hundreds of patients each day. Humanity First also provided clothes for children. The charity, which works with non-Muslim volunteers and organisations as well, is receiving increasing international recognition. Food distribution activities were acknowledged this year by Macedonia's media, while Togo's Minister of Health welcomed and greeted a Humanity First team who had travelled to the country in a mobile clinic, performing vision-restoring cataract surgeries in some of the most obscure and deprived regions of the world. Indonesia was one of dozens of countries Humanity First worked in through the year. There, the organisation has been running a permanent medical clinic in an area of poverty for several years. But 2018 would prove to be a particular test for the Indonesian Humanity First team, with the country devastated by natural disasters. First, there was a massive, deadly earthquake in Lombok. Humanity First doctors immediately flew towards the danger and began to provide free aid. Just as MTA asked one of the doctors for an interview, the earth began to shake again. But perhaps the most emotional story was how Ahmadiyya Muslim refugees who had been exiled by anti-Ahmadiyya extremists returned to the area to offer aid, even to those who had left them homeless for the last 12 years. Sadly, worse followed a few months later when a deadly tsunami struck the country. Amid the destruction, Humanity First Indonesia built camps. Then in a second phase of work, Humanity First teams arrived from the UK and Germany and held a series of meetings with government officials before distributing hundreds of filtration kits to provide clean water. Humanity First disaster response teams also provided food and medical aid in other countries, including India, after the 2018 floods in Assam.
MTA News were delighted to broadcast live from the UK National Peace Symposium for the very first time this year. Hundreds of guests and dignitaries, including senior parliamentarians and ambassadors around the world, braved the weather conditions to join Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, may Allah be his helper, as he gifted the annual Peace Prize and delivered a powerful address.
Quite openly and proudly, the major powers are trading arms that are being used to kill, maim, and brutalize innocent people, whilst the economies of the selling countries may attain short-term benefit. Their hands are covered in the blood of hundreds of thousands of people. Instead of embarking on an arms race leading to death and destruction, We must join the race to save and protect humanity. Instead of shutting down borders and ports, we must open our hearts to one another. Knock down the walls that divide us, feed the hungry, and help those who are suffering.
We have to have religious leaders and the religious people coming together in these types of settings to talk about peace and how important it is. And it's always a huge honour to listen to His Holiness, who has such clarity in his thoughts on this issue.
In the hours and days around the event, His Holiness's guidance was further amplified around the world through a series of press conferences and interviews with the international media. Since the Caliph first launched the Symposium 15 years ago, Ahmadiyya Muslims have humbly worked to extend his message of peace. This year, MTA UK's team reported on symposia relaying His Holiness's teachings in Hayes, Tooting and Birmingham, as well as an international Pan-African Peace Symposium hosted at the Bet el-Fadou Mosque in the UK. Internationally, we saw peace conferences in Greece, Iceland, New Zealand, Nigeria, South Africa and several in Australia, all relaying the Caliph's words to those countries' intelligentsia. Then in India, their symposia were held in Calcutta, Bhadrak, Balesore, Delhi, Hyderabad, Odisha and Kurukshetra. Other countries took creative approaches to promoting peace. In Canada and the Ivory Coast, the Ahmadiyya Muslim community walked for peace. In Nigeria, they cycled for peace. In Switzerland, they planted a peace tree. In Scotland, they held a Love Thy Neighbour dinner. In Canada, they also hosted a World Religions Conference and then a number of interfaith events with the country's indigenous communities. MTA also reported on interfaith conferences in Benin, Jamaica, Sweden and the UK.
Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, may Allah be his helper, presided over the graduation of 43 students from Jamia Theology and Languages Institutes in the UK, Canada and Germany in March. After presenting the newly qualified Imam certificates at a joint ceremony in Hazome, His Holiness delivered a faith-inspiring address.
ज़िंदगियाँ वक्फ की, किस लिए वक्फ की? मसीह मौद के मिशन की तकमील करनी है। इसलिए कि इस्लाम की नशत सानिया का काम जो हज़रत मसीह मौद अलैहिस्सलाम के सपुर्द किया गया, उसको आपने आगे बढ़ाना है। तौहीद का क़याम दुनिया में करना है। आपने हज़रत मोहम्मद रसूलुल्लाह सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम के झंडे को दुनिया में लहराना है।
As the requirements and resources of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community grow, so do Jamias. This year, Jamia Bangladesh laid the foundation for a new campus, while Jamia Nigeria inaugurated a new e-library. MTA News also reported from the graduations of Jamia Nigeria and Jamia Ghana, as well as the annual sports events of Jamia Ghana and Jamia Canada. However, perhaps the country we reported from most extensively was Indonesia, where we joined their Jamia's academic events, sports events, picnics, graduations, and even brought news of how a former graduate had been posted to serve in London.
The most important person in Islamic history is the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, who is described in the Quran as a mercy for mankind. So, throughout the year, MTA News reported on various events held by the Ahmadiyya Muslim community to commemorate his life, including Siratun Nabi Jalsas in Fiji, Sri Lanka, East London, and South London. Each March, the Ahmadiyya Muslim community also commemorates the most loyal servant of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, on Promised Messiah Day. Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian, India, lived between 1835 and 1908 and founded the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. Born around 1300 years after the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad devoted his life to defending Islam and restoring its true peaceful teachings as revealed in the Quran. This year on Promised Messiah Day, MTA News exclusively showed the special relaunch of the Promised Messiah's newspaper, Al-Hakam.
यहाँ से अखबार अल-हकम जो कादियान से निकला करता था और दोबारा इसकी इशाअत 1934 में शुरू हुई, फिर बंद हो गया। आज अंग्रेज़ी ज़बान में उसका यहाँ से इजरा हो रहा है और आज यौम मसीह मौत और ये अखबार जो है हज़रत मसीह अलैहिस्सलाम के ज़माने में का पहला अखबार था।
We also covered Promised Messiah Day events in Gambia, Indonesia, Nigeria, Sri Lanka, and the UK.
The Ahmadiyya Muslim community promotes the health and fitness of its members by holding numerous sports events worldwide. This year, MTNU's joined the inaugural multi-week New York Basketball League, from its launch in February to its conclusion several weeks later. But perhaps there was no Ahmadiyya Basketball League quite as special as that of Belize, where basketball camps and a league were established across the country by the Ahmadiyya Muslim community to provide a positive, healthy outlet for underprivileged children. As a result, 2 teams from the Ahmadiyya League were selected to represent the whole of Belize in an international tournament held in Mexico. There they defeated teams from Mexico, Colombia and Guatemala to win both available trophies, to huge acclaim in their native Belize, where all 3 major national television stations, 2 newspapers and multiple radio stations covered the victory. Moreover, the Ahmadiyya Muslim community was publicly acknowledged for its services towards the country's underprivileged youth, and Ahmadiyya representatives were invited to talk shows as a result. In 2018, MTN News also covered the UK's national basketball tournament, Spain's football tournament, Indonesia's volleyball tournament, multi-sport competitions in Indonesia and Australia, and even skiing in Switzerland. Then, in international competition, we saw the Nordic nations compete in a multi-sport games, Lugna Germany become European volleyball champions, and, in March, a UK team win the inaugural European football tournament.
Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, may Allah be his helper, toured Spain in April, delivering 1 Friday sermon from the Badr Rahman Mosque in Valencia and a further 2 from Basharat Mosque in Cordoba. The second of those sermons dealt with escalating tensions in Syria, where a number of international powers had recently announced increased conflict.
बड़ी तेज़ी से ये अब जंग की तरफ बढ़ रहे हैं। रूस और अमेरिका दोनों तरफ तैयारियों में मसरूफ़ हैं और असल में तो ये अपनी बर्तरी साबित करना चाहते हैं और नाम ये है कि हम मज़लूमों का हक दिलवाना चाहते हैं। असल में तो ये मज़लूमों का हक दिलवाने के नाम पर, जिसमें मुसलमान ममालिक शामिल हैं, मुसलमान मुल्कों को तबाह करना चाहते हैं। बस अल्लाह ताला मुसलमानों को भी अक्ल दे और ये इन लोगों से मदद हासिल करने के बजाय ख़ुद अपने फ़ैसले करने वाले हों, अपने अवाम के हुकूक अदा करने वाले हों, अवाम अपने हुकूमत के हक़ अदा करने वाली हो।
During His Holiness's tour, MTA News delivered a special report on the Ahmadiyya Muslim community of Guadeloupe.
C'est lui qui m'a amené vers l'Ahmadiyya. Donc ces discours sont empreints d'une grande sagesse, bien sûr.
2-3 दिन हुए, ग्वादेलूप का एक प्रोग्राम आ रहा था मुरब्बी के साथ। वहाँ के एक नौ अहमदी हैं। उन्होंने कहा कि अहमदियत का तारुफ तो मुझे हो गया, लेकिन बैत नहीं कर रहा था मैं, और खुतबात के ज़रिए फिर मुझे बैत की भी तारीख पैदा हुई। सुनने के बाद फिर तसल्ली हुई।
In recent years, the Ahmadiyya Muslim community has displayed its literature at the biggest book fairs around the world. This year, translations of the Quran and other key books were shown at the biggest events in Argentina, Austria, Georgia, Germany, India, Nepal, Poland, Sweden, Thailand, and the USA, as well as on several occasions in cities in Slovenia. Similarly, the Ahmadiyya Muslim community prepared beautiful Quran and literature exhibitions in French Guiana, the USA, and Spain, while New Zealand's Ahmadis toured the country with a Quran exhibition. And then there was the Review of Religions magazine in conjunction with the Ahmadiyya Muslim Community UK, at the London Book Fair in April. For 3 days, crowds of Londoners queued to view ancient Quranic manuscripts, to have their names written in Arabic, and to try writing a verse themselves for the Al-Qalam project.
Well, the experience was very spiritual, writing a verse out of a very special book.
It's a surreal experience. I'm not sure why, but the hair on my hand stood on end.
I think this project is amazing. I think it's a really powerful thing to do. It was really nerve-wracking.
The event garnered significant media attention.
8 media outlets have come. Geo News came here. There was a BBC journalist here earlier. The London Book Fair official Twitter account retweeted regarding the Al-Qalam from different Jamaat accounts over 15 to 20 times over the 2 days. London Book Fair Live, which has its own YouTube channel, also came. We had a Middle Eastern TV channel which goes all over the Middle East come. We had another channel from a Pakistani TV station that come. We had a Romanian press agency that come. One of the people who came said this is the only hands-on activity that we could find at the whole London Book Fair. So they would come, they would actually go through the exercise of writing a verse, asking what the translation is. That gave us an opening to talk more about the Jamaat, to talk more about Islam.
But perhaps no country carried out a Quran campaign this year quite like the Sri Lankans. MTA News reported on 11 separate occasions as they seemed to meet just about every major minister in the country, delivering copies of the Quran with Sinhala translation. They visited dignitaries and religious leaders. They appeared on national television stations advertising the Quran, and just when they seemed to have run out of Sri Lankan leaders to gift copies, they began contacting members of the Foreign Diplomatic Corps. The MTA News team most enjoyed reporting on the meeting between the Ahmadiyya delegation and Sri Lankan World Cup winning former cricket star, Honourable Arjuna Rantunga, who now serves as the country's Minister of Petroleum Resources Development and was gifted his copy of the Quran in the summer.
It wasn't only politicians and dignitaries to whom the Ahmadiyya Muslim community conveyed the true peaceful teachings of Islam. The message was brought to the masses through various strategies employed around the world. The UK and the USA saw the launch of the Messiah Has Come billboards, while Switzerland held its own campaign. In Denmark, the Ahmadis delivered public lectures on Islam, while in Germany they held a series of press conferences to explain their beliefs. At the opposite end of the world, Adelaide's Ahmadi Muslims repeatedly traveled hundreds of kilometers around Australia to visit people in remote areas and engage with churches.
In many countries, Ahmadi Muslims faced another year of persecution in 2018. In Indonesia, it has now been over a decade since more than 100 Ahmadis were displaced from their homes by anti-Ahmadiyya extremists. These Ahmadis were living in shelters, but the response of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community is always peaceful and through legal means. In May, at the start of Ramadan, anti-Ahmadiyya rioters attacked and destroyed Ahmadi homes. The community responded with press conferences, raising media awareness of the situation. Indonesia's Ahmadi lawyers met with human rights groups to raise the case of displaced villagers. Similarly, the Ahmadiyya Muslim community campaigned at a constitutional court for a review of those laws which persecute Ahmadis. Their case was rejected. Nowhere is the persecution more intense than in Pakistan, which has seen the rise of a new anti-Ahmadiyya extremist group, the so-called Tehreek-e-Labbaik. Their campaigns this year included an anti-Ahmadiyya hate speech event in the village of Gogiat, where locals were told Ahmadis must be punished. Within days, the local Ahmadiyya graveyard was attacked and vandalized. Noting the global situation, Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, may Allah be his helper, called for a response focusing on prayer.
अलजायर के अहमदियों को जुल्म का निशाना बनाया जा रहा है, जेलों में डाला जा रहा है और बड़े बड़े जुर्माने भी किए जा रहे हैं, जिनकी अदायगी की शायद उन गरीब लोगों में, जो अक्सर गरीब लोगों की है, इस्तिताअत भी ना हो। इसी तरह पाकिस्तान के अहमदियों को भी याद रखें अपनी दुआओं में। वहाँ भी आजकल पंजाब में ख़ास तौर पर बाकायदा मनसूबाबंदी से जुल्म किए जा रहे हैं.
The plight of Ahmadis facing persecution did not go unnoticed by global authorities. This year, the UN Human Rights Council invited Sarif Takhariyaz to deliver an address on the persecution. As in Indonesia, things only got worse in Pakistan when Ramadan began in May. What should have been a holy month of peace instead saw a mob of so-called Muslims, aided by local authorities, vandalize an historic Ahmadiyya mosque in Sialkot.
अब ये भी ऐलान कर रहे हैं कि और मस्जिदों को भी हम नुकसान पहुंचाएंगे और गिराएंगे. हाफिज हैं, कारी हैं, कोई साहब एक सियासी पार्टी के.
Unfortunately, the attack on holy places of worship wasn't limited to Pakistan. Indonesian extremists protested with hate speech and banners outside an Ahmadi mosque. Then in Liverpool, UK, an Ahmadi mosque was vandalized on Remembrance Day. In Germany, the Ahmadiyya Muslim Community had purchased a plot for a new mosque. There, protesters left Christian symbols all over the land before arriving en masse with Islamophobic banners at the foundation laying. However, no opposition can halt the progress of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. Even as extremists attempted to demolish one mosque in Sialkot, hundreds more were being built and purchased by Ahmadis, and at the forefront of this effort was Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, may Allah be his helper. In 2018, among the many sites he inaugurated around the world was the UK's £1.5 million multi-storey Beit al-Ihsan complex, funded, like all Ahmadiyya buildings, only through the donations and sacrifices of Ahmadis themselves. His Holiness also laid the foundations for a new wing at the Beit al-Fatu Mosque complex, and in May, MTN News reported live from his Midlands tour, where he inaugurated Beit al-Maqit Mosque in Walsall and Beit al-Hafiz Mosque in Nottingham.
A delegation of Christians from the city of Najran came to meet the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing of Allah be upon him. After some time, Christian guests were becoming agitated, and so he inquired if something was wrong. They informed that it was the time for their prayers, and they had nowhere to worship. Upon this, the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam set an everlasting example of religious tolerance for all Muslims to follow, as he offered the Christians his own mosque to worship.
MTN News also reported on just some of the hundreds of new mosques and buildings the Ahmadiyya Muslim community was blessed with around the world in 2018. We saw new foundations laid in Scunthorpe, Bangladesh and Germany, as well as new inaugurations in Canada. The founder of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community had been told, "Expand thy house," and so Fiji welcomed a new mission house, while New York's Beth Zufar Mosque complex completed building new sports facilities. Some of the most inspirational stories of progress came from Africa. This year saw the inauguration of new mosques in Kenya, a Lajna building in Nigeria, and a Khudam building in Ghana. We reported on 6 new mosques in Benin. In one instance, an idol-worshipping chief named Mr. Dauda converted to Ahmadiyyat and promptly donated land on which a mosque accommodating 150 people has been built. Then in Gobogi, the locals joined Ahmadiyyat after preaching in 2016. And donated a plot on which a mosque with room for 200 worshippers has already been inaugurated. We also reported on 6 more mosques and a new Islamic radio station in the Ivory Coast, where Ahmadiyyat is also rapidly spreading. In one instance, a chief imam of 44 villages accepted Ahmadiyyat and brought many of his followers with him in 2014. His region has now been blessed with a new mosque. In another case, a village joined Ahmadiyyat in 2013 and donated land on which a mosque has been inaugurated. In yet another instance, local Ahmadis themselves voluntarily laboured to build their own mosque. Then, in Sierra Leone, the community's members number 600,000, or roughly 8% of the entire country's population. There, they already own 1,200 mosques, 276 schools and 2 Islamic radio stations. This year, MTN News reported on the inauguration of 5 new mosques in Sierra Leone. Worldwide, the thousands and thousands of mosques Ahmadis now run are always seeking to contribute to their local communities. This year, Australia and Germany held mosque open days, while Indonesia went a step further and ran a live-in program through the year, in which non-Ahmadis actually lived in an Ahmadiyya mosque complex for a period of time.
Throughout the year, Ahmadi Muslims thank Allah the Almighty for the blessings of Caliphate. For example, 400 members of the UK Pan-African Association held their 2018 convention on the theme of Caliphate. But there is one day in the year Ahmadis especially commemorate the blessings of this institution, and MTA News offered coverage on Khilafat Day celebrations in Australia, India, Indonesia, Nigeria, Sri Lanka, and the USA.
MTA viewers enjoyed the national cricket tournaments of Australia, Denmark and the USA in 2018. MTA also provided extensive coverage of the UK's Atfal Cricket League and of several competitions in Austria. But no tournament was more fortunate than this year's Masroor International in London, which saw teams from around the world compete over several days for the right to play a final in front of His Holiness Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, may Allah be his helper. Canada continued their near-total dominance of the competition by defeating England once again to lift the trophy.
A number of Christian churches were tragically bombed by terrorists in Indonesia in May. The national president of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Community condemned the attacks and explained how they were totally against the true, peaceful teachings of Islam. The Ahmadiyya Muslim Community then joined with other Muslim groups in a public gathering which aimed to show unity against these extremist attacks. Throughout the year, Ahmadi Muslims worked on building bridges between sects and promoting peace. A number of academics and clerics from a state Islamic institute visited the community headquarters. The Ahmadis also collaborated with other Muslim groups to host a national event on Islamic leadership. The community delivered lectures at universities, hosted religion and peace seminars, participated in World Tolerance Day, and publicly paid tribute on the passing of a well-known national leader.
Earlier in our annual report, we noted the unfortunate story of how extremists increased in their anti-Ahmadiyya activities during what should be the most peaceful of months, Ramadan. On the other hand, the Ahmadiyya Muslim community demonstrated the true spirit of fasting. Around the world, iftar dinners were held at the Ahmadiyya mosques, at which non-Ahmadi neighbours and guests were invited in large numbers to share in our food and joy on opening fasts during the holy month. MTA News reported on such events from Australia, Macedonia, Mauritius, Sierra Leone, Sri Lanka, the UK and across the USA. Then, Eid al-Fitr fell in June, and in countries such as Australia and India, the celebration following Ramadan was also used as an opportunity to share our mosques, food and joy with non-Ahmadi neighbours and guests. MTA News also reported on Eid from Canada, Indonesia, Nigeria, Sierra Leone and the USA. Eid wasn't the only celebration in June 2018 for the Ahmadis of Baziyangadi, India, who marked the local centenary of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. Later in the month, Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, may Allah be his helper, graced the final session of the UK Shura, where elected national delegates planned the year ahead for the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. MTA News also reported on the 2018 Shuras of Indonesia, Nigeria, Switzerland and Ansarullah, UK.
Canada's Minister for Immigration, Ahmed Hussain, visited His Holiness Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, may Allah be his helper, at the London Mosque in July. The Caliph advises politicians on the importance of establishing peace in society, among other matters, and so Ahmadi Muslims follow his example in reaching out to national leaders around the world. Honduras is a relatively new and small community, but already the local Ahmadis are setting up meetings with mayors and other officials. Elsewhere this year, Indonesia invited a Dutch diplomat to visit one of their mosques. An Ahmadi Muslim official addressed the National Parliament of Scotland.
For the Holy Quran says in chapter 94, "So when thou art free, strive hard." It guides mankind to achieve peace by freeing of a slave, the feeding in the day of hunger an orphan near of kin, or a poor man lying in the dust.
In the USA, a high-ranking general visited an Ahmadiyya mosque, while a delegation of Ahmadi Muslims visited Congress, meeting some of the most senior politicians in the country to campaign for the human rights of Rohingya Muslims in Asia.
Ahmadi Muslims in the USA celebrated Independence Day on the 4th of July. They also marked similar national events throughout 2018, such as the Memorial Day tributes to those who have lost their lives in military service. American Ahmadi Muslims do this to follow the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, who said loyalty to one's country is part of faith. Similarly, MTA News also reported on how Ahmadis of Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Indonesia marked their own countries' independence anniversaries. The Indonesians also commemorated National Youth Pledge Day. Meanwhile, Australian Ahmadi Muslims celebrated Australia Day, with the Lajna Women's Organisation also holding their own independent events. Later in the year, Australian Ahmadi Muslims paid their respects to those who lost their lives in the war on Anzac Day.
From its humble beginnings in Qadian, the Jalsa Salana has become the flagship annual convention of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community worldwide. In Bangladesh, Uganda, and the USA's West Coast, they hold regional Jalsa Salanas. This year, MTA News reported on 11 such regional events in Indonesia alone. Then we took you to this year's national Jalsa Salanas in Australia, Brazil, Cameroon, Fiji, French Guiana, Ghana, Greece, Guyana, Haiti, Ireland, Kenya, Madagascar, Mali, Spain, Switzerland, Uganda, and the USA, while we brought you daily updates from Canada. But Jalsa Salanas at which the Caliph of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community is present are always extra special. The MTA News team were honoured to offer coverage looking back at 2017's event while covering live build-up to this year's Jalsa. Then, when Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, may Allah be his helper, conducted his inspection, it felt Jalsa season had truly arrived. His Holiness visited teams at the Badr Futul Mosque, Jamia UK, and of course Hadiqat al-Mahdi, to ensure meticulous preparations were being made to welcome the guests of the Promised Messiah ﷺ. During the Jalsa itself, international Ahmadi Muslims and young missionaries shared their inspirational stories with MTA News. Over 3 blessed days, His Holiness had spiritually inspired more than 30,000 people on site. However, only later did we realize just how many the Caliph's message had reached.
15 TV channels ने जलसा यूके की कार्रवाई नशर की, जिनमें घाना, नाइजीरिया, सेरालियोन, द गैम्बिया, रवांडा, बुर्किना फासो, बेनिन, युगांडा, माली, कॉन्गो, ब्राज़ील। पहली मरतबा बुरुंडी टेलीविजन ने भी जलसे की कार्रवाई नशर की। मुतहर्रिक सहाफ़ियों के अपने अपने चैनल्स पर न्यूज़ स्टोरीज दी। मजमूई तौर पर इससे 50 मिलियन अफराद तक अफ्रीका में जलसे की कार्रवाई दिखाई गई। इस हवाले से सैकड़ों तासुरात भी मौसूल हुए हैं। पता लगता है कि लोगों ने देखा।
In the streets of Freetown, everywhere people are appreciating that we have been watching Jalsa Salana through all the television stations in Freetown, the capital of Sierra Leone, and other all 4 big towns, that is Bo, Kenma, and Makeni.
His Holiness's schedule remained relentless in the weeks after the Jalsa Salana, as he devoted hour after hour to meeting Ahmadi Muslims. MTA News was delighted to offer exclusive coverage of a number of post-Jalsa receptions, including the Caliph's meeting with the Pan-African Association. Finally, 2 weeks after the annual convention, His Holiness addressed a packed Eid congregation of thousands at the Badr Futul Mosque complex, with Ahmadi Muslims celebrating the holy day around the world. As September arrived, there was still no let-up in the Caliph's schedule, as now he toured Europe for Jalsa Salanas in Germany and Belgium.
On returning to the UK, His Holiness spent 3 days with Khudam al-Ahmadiyya at the National Ijtima.
Time for prayer should be given precedence over all other activities.
This Ahmadiyya Muslim Youth Association was founded by the Promised Son and is now established around the world. This year, MTA News also joined national ijtimas in Austria, Ghana, Guinea-Bissau, India, Indonesia, Malaysia, Nigeria, Sweden, Switzerland, Uganda and the USA. Then there were Atfal ijtimas for children aged 7 to 15, and we also took on a sample of regional ijtimas in Ghana, Indonesia and across the USA.
The following weekend, His Holiness addressed the national ijtimas of Ansar and Lajna UK, the Elders Association and the Women's Association of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Community.
The Lajna Ijtima provides an excellent platform for the tarbiyat of our Ahmadiyya Muslim women and girls.
Through the year, we also covered Lajna ijtimas in Germany, Ireland, Nigeria, Sri Lanka, and both national and regional ijtimas in Indonesia. Then we joined Ansar ijtimas in Australia, Germany, Guinea-Bissau, India, Indonesia, Ivory Coast, Liberia, Nigeria, Sri Lanka, Sweden, and Switzerland.
September was an especially blessed month for the Ahmadiyya Muslim Youth Association UK. Most importantly, Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, may Allah be his helper, graciously attended the National Ijtima. The month also saw the Ahmadiyya Muslim Youth Cricket Club win their first trophy, with a dominant performance in the final of a local cup.
Asif bowls to Haraval, hits him down the ground, a beautiful looking shot.
Meanwhile, the Ahmadiyya Muslim Youth Football Club rocketed to the top of their league with an unbeaten start to their season. Then, Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, invited the Ahmadiyya Muslim youths to City Hall in recognition of the fact that they had raised £1.6 million for charities this year.
Love for all, hatred for none is an example for others to follow.
This astonishing figure was gathered by just a few thousand Ahmadiyya Muslim youths working through the year at events such as the Charity Challenge in July. Children as young as 7 had contributed to the special efforts. The youths were not alone in almsgiving. Hundreds of volunteers from the Elders Association worked tirelessly to organise the charity walk and charity dinner, raising a further £1 million for UK charities in 2018, with a number of national members of Parliament joining the cheque presentation. Similar efforts were made around the world. Ireland held its charity walk, Canada enjoyed numerous charity runs, and in New York, Ahmadiyya Muslim youths served the needy at a food bank. A number of events were also held in Australia. Then there were environmental initiatives. Ahmadiyya Muslims participated in tree planting events in Australia and Canada. Earlier in our annual review, we mentioned Humanity First. One humanitarian organisation we are yet to mention is the International Association of Ahmadiyya Architects and Engineers, or IAAE. This year, they held their European Symposium at the Beit el-Futuh Mosque in London, and their international projects included a mosque complex in Mali. The IAAE's humanitarian efforts include working to bring clean water and renewable electricity to remote and underprivileged areas across Africa, while they are planning to set up an international centre of technical excellence to train African engineers and architects. Their efforts were recognised in Gambia when the country's president Adama Barrow invited a delegation made up from the IAAE and the Ahmadiyya Muslim community to discuss methods of developing the country's technical, engineering and technological capacity. The president praised the IAAE and the Ahmadiyya Muslim community for providing hospitals, including one which had treated his mother. He added that Ahmadiyya schools were doing very well across the country.
September was a busy month for the Ahmadis of New York. They participated in the local African American Day Parade and the India Day Parade. But the highlight of the month was the inauguration of Ahmadiyya Way. The local council had announced permission for the road outside Beth Zafar Mosque in Queens, New York, to be renamed during the Independence Day ceremonies earlier in the year. The official renaming ceremony took place in September and was attended by 20 local politicians, dignitaries, and neighbors.
Indonesia hosted this year's Asian Games, which drew to a conclusion in September. Volunteers of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Youth Association contributed with the hygiene campaign by cleaning around the event to serve their country on the world stage. As this year's games took place, MTA were able to report on the success story of a previous year when an Ahmadiyya Muslim had won medals for Indonesia.
Nah, tahun 62 itu diadakanlah Asian Games, di mana saya dan Unang untuk main ganda. Dalam perorangannya, Tan Yuhok berhasil menerima emas, Ferry Sonovil menerima perak untuk tunggal, dan saya sendiri untuk regu dapat medali emas, dan untuk perorangannya dapat perunggu.
Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad led an historic tour of the USA and Guatemala in October. In the USA, His Holiness travelled the country meeting Ahmadi Muslims in personal mulaqats, in groups, at Ameen ceremonies, and in Waqf-e-Noor classes. He also inaugurated mosques including Bat Lafayette, the first purpose-built mosque in Philadelphia. The Caliph's tour generated significant media interest, and at a number of functions he addressed hundreds of guests, including senior national politicians. Then to Guatemala. In emotional scenes, His Holiness met local Ahmadis, many able to join a live pledge ceremony for the very first time. The visit also saw the Caliph inaugurate Humanity First state-of-the-art Nasir Hospital, which will serve the local community regardless of religious beliefs.
I pray that a spirit of service to humanity takes permanent root in society, so that we protect our future and leave behind a better world for our children.
Tonight's event was amazing, very inspiring, the work that is being done here by Humanity First. Being able to sit there and have dinner with His Holiness was extra special.
3 years ago, when we made a projected budget, it was $2.8 million. Today, we have, alhamdulillah, completed the project, not only within budget, but with at least $400,000 of the upgrades without increasing the budget. That was a huge plus. There was a group of Ministry of Health people who came to us from the government of Guatemala, and their common observation was that this facility is worth at least $10 million. So that is what, alhamdulillah, we have been able to achieve just by sheer Hazur's guidance and his prayers, and obviously with God's blessings.
Guatemala's wasn't the only hospital founded by the Ahmadiyya Muslim community this year. Ghana also inaugurated their own facility. These efforts are inspired by the prayers and advice of Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, may Allah be his helper, who addressed the UK's Ahmadiyya Medical Association at the start of the year and called for Ahmadi health professionals to do even more to serve some of the most deprived regions of the world. Similar conferences were held by Ahmadi Muslim doctors in Canada and Indonesia to plan how they too can continue serving humanity. Even those Ahmadi Muslims who don't belong to a medical field work towards these causes. This year, MTA News reported on hospital visits to cheer patients several times in Honduras and Indonesia. We followed blood donations to save lives in Germany, Guinea-Bissau, Ireland, and repeatedly in Indonesia. One of the most notable such campaigns came from the USA, where in the last few years, the Muslims for Life team have donated 60,000 pints of blood, saving up to 180,000 lives. Dozens of events took place across the country in 2018, culminating in a donation event at Capitol Hill. In other news from October, Ahmadi Muslims in Canada marked the country's first ever Islamic Heritage Month.
A number of Atfal in the UK travelled to Ghana in October on a tour which followed in the footsteps of Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, may Allah be his helper's time in Ghana. There they visited sites where His Holiness had once lived and served. They learnt about local history and culture, as well as the Ahmadiyya Muslim community in the country. These outings are an excellent method to educate the youth and build bonds of brotherhood between them. On the island of Mayotte, they took their atfal to the beach for a day trip. Similarly, Sweden's youth travelled to the northern areas. Other trips in 2018 included the UK Waqf visit to Spain and New Zealand's Ansar and Khuddam travelling to Australia.
100 years on from the end of the First World War, the Ahmadiyya Muslim community joined in Remembrance Day events in Australia, Canada and around the UK. Participating in these events saw links built with the RAF and Navy, which subsequently saw these groups make several visits to Ahmadiyya mosques in London. Senior leaders from 2 of these parties were honoured to briefly meet Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, may Allah be his helper. The month also saw a delegation from MTA Germany enjoy the honour of meeting His Holiness, who also accepted an interview request from a Dutch journalist.
A German Ahmadi Muslim youth delegation travelled to London to meet His Holiness Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, may Allah be his helper, in early December. MTA News filmed part of another meeting some days later, when 2 leading councillors from East Hampshire, the location of Hadiqat al-Mahdi, were granted an audience in his office.
He's a very intelligent man, a very thoughtful man with clearly great integrity. We discussed some business issues which the district council is able to help on. We discussed our future cooperation between the district council and the AMA, which we really want to foster and develop.
A very pleasant meeting, an informal meeting. We talked about the new mosque at Islamabad that they're building, the new complex.
It's been absolutely wonderful. He's a charming man. He listened so patiently, and we had an absolutely wonderful time. We were so honoured to meet him.
Later in the month, His Holiness presided over 60 Ameen ceremonies at the London Mosque. Then, at the very end of the year, which is a holiday season for much of the world, the Caliph's schedule remained as intense as ever and included an Amla meeting with office bearers of the UK's Ahmadi Muslim youth. His Holiness also delivered the concluding address via television link to over 18,000 delegates at the Jalsa Salana Qadian, with thousands more gathered at the Baitul Futuh Mosque in London. Our Caliph said goodbye to 2018 with a series of prayers for the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
साल इख्ताम को पहुंच रहा है. बाद मुल्कों में 24 घंटे और बाद में 2 दिन और 2 रातें बाकी हैं. बस इनको इन आखिरी दिनों को भी दरूद से भर दें और नए साल का इस्तकबाल भी दरूद और सलाम से करें, ताकि हम जल्द अज जल्द उन बरक़ात को हासिल करने वाले हों जो हज़रत सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम की ज़ात से वाबस्ता हैं. अल्लाह ताला हमें इसकी तौफ़ीक़ अता फ़रमाए.